What is going on, guys? It's good to be back for another smashing video where we talk about the craziness that is ensuing in Pokemon. Way too much for me to even really process, but I was like, nope, we're going to move forward. We're going to make a video. We're going to talk about all of that. So let's just put it all out there, right? Perfect Order looks like it's set to be a flop. Let's just be honest. The Pokemon featured on the box don't look all that great. The pack art doesn't look all that great. It's looking like it's going to be a flop. There are probably going to be some awesome cards within the set, but so far, what we're seeing, there's a lot of opportunity that I feel like is missed. But hey, every single set can't be awesome, right? Mega Evolution is amazing. Phantasmal is amazing, although rather small. And Perfect Order is going to be rather small as well. Anyways, so Perfect Order looks like it's going to be a little bit of a flop, but rest assured, Vintage is still doing very, very well, and I think most people that are watching this channel probably want to hear what's going on in Vintage. So let's get into the real meat of this video. Holy cow! Logan Paul is just doing way too much right now, and yeah, it's getting crazy. So a first edition base set booster box has just been sold on Golden Auctions for 1.3 some change. So basically almost $1.4 million for a first edition base set booster box. I do believe that that was opened and sold pack by pack, lot by lot, and it added up to roughly 1.4 million, which is, I think, a record-breaking number for a first edition base set. Also, I think just the fact that the packs are going for roughly like $40,000 a pack says a lot about first edition base set cards, right? I think that PSA 9s and PSA 10s are probably going to start rising rapidly due to that massive price tag on those packs, right? We know a lot of cards that come fresh out of the packs probably aren't even going to get PSA 10, let alone a PSA 9. I did a base set opening, base set unlimited, and we got a bunch of PSA 8s back. So PSA 8s back. That's a tricky one. It's tricky for me, okay? Anyways, I thought that was pretty amazing that people were really willing to pay up for that box. I think maybe it was broken up just so that people could all have a piece of that box. It would be more profitable. Maybe they thought that they would get more doing pack by pack versus selling the entire box. Maybe it was an authenticity type thing. Maybe it was like, hey, people are not going to be as forward on buying this entire box. We're probably going to get way more if we stretch it out and break it up. Maybe it was like, hey, if we open the box and confirm each pack looks like it's untampered and factory, we'll sell it that way. Ken Golden is absolutely crushing it right now. Between that, dude, he's just milking Logan Paul right now. Between the box and or maybe Logan Paul is actually milking his services. Anyways, back to Logan Paul. There's been a lot of controversy with the liquid marketplace with his Pikachu Illustrator that is an auction. It is kind of the first of its kind, an auction that's set to run for an entire month. This was news to me, right? I've been out of the hobby for a little bit. I've been dabbling in paintball, which is now doing very well. I'm starting to sell stuff. I'm starting to sell more of my paintball stuff. So anyways, but I've come back and wow, there's just a lot of new information. Also, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit and double back to modern and what's going on with modern Pokemon. But it is confirmed that Millennium Printing Group will be ramping things up. Pokemon has done a massive lease for their new operations, which will be in North Carolina. I'm pretty sure if I read that right, it'll be in North Carolina. I'm not going to say exactly where it would be because I don't want to be quoted on that, but it will be in North Carolina. It will be a massive printing facility, and we'll talk about that in a minute, what that means for modern Pokemon products. We've had a lot of reprints lately, so that's also good news. Not that anyone's having any better luck going to the store and finding product, but I do think things are starting to cool down, and at the same time, I look at Vintage and what's going on with Logan Paul, and I feel like things are only heating up more, and the hobby is just getting even more explosive and just adding fuel to the FOMO fire. that is consuming most people that come into this hobby and spend way too much money, leverage too much debt, and end up in a massive hole. Yeah, there's a lot of hype in the hobby right now. More and more people are getting into it every day. And I think, these massive sales are just bringing more eyes to the hobby, right? And when there's a lot of money in something, people follow. Lately, there's been a lot of people going to One Piece, and now I feel like it's kind of switching back over to Pokemon. But anyways, Logan Paul had his Pikachu Illustrator that he bought for roughly $5 million on Liquid Marketplace. He was doing a fractional ownership thing with this card. I actually like the idea of it, right? It's a nice idea. Hypothetically, it would be cool to own a piece of that Pokemon history, but you don't really own it, and it's kind of like a meme coin almost, but there's something tangible, at least tied to it. So I liked the idea of it. Unfortunately, it was not carried out in a professional way. It's not right. There's definitely tons of ethical lines that have been crossed. Logan Paul, I don't think is a Pokemon collector, right? But I think he's someone that's very influential that has changed the hobby for better or worse. But this was a major blunder, right? So the Pikachu Illustrator, the most expensive Pokemon card of all time, like literally they gave him the Guinness World Record for the most expensive Pokemon card of all time. That was the Pikachu Illustrator, which if you don't know what the Pikachu Illustrator is, it was, in a nutshell, this card is part of an illustration contest way back when Pokemon was kind of in its infancy, and to design a really, really cool card. And that became the Pikachu Illustrator. That became pretty much the number one kind of trophy card in the entire TCG. It's the number one card in the entire TCG is the Pikachu Illustrator. It's actually crazy that I even know people that own that card, not in a, now obviously Logan Paul had the first PSA 10, but the fact that I even know people that have them in lower grades is insane, or I guess I should say know of people that have them in lower grades. It's just insane, such an insane card. But anyways, $5 million card, so he put it on Liquid Marketplace. Everyone was supposed to get fractional ownership. Then apparently he bought the card back, or so he says he bought the card back, and everyone was supposed to be distributed those funds. No one really got the funds, right? There's a lot of confusion there. It's very controversial. And so with all of that going on, the card is still up for auction. So there's a lot of going wrong here that I feel like the community should put its foot down and be like, why are we all letting this happen? This is wrong. This is messed up. Unfortunately, when you get people like Logan Paul that are so high up in the social, financial stratosphere, it kind of seems like there's nothing that can be done to help or stop things like this. People have to be smart and have their wits about them. And unfortunately, I would never buy into something like the Liquid Marketplace. I know a lot of people did, and a lot of people got screwed over. And I just think people have to really think more before they do something like that and try and buy into something like that where they don't even really have ownership or control any ownership. Something that I can't control the outcome of, I wouldn't want to be a part of. It's the same reason that investing in the stock market is something that I enjoy doing, but it also stresses the crap out of me because I really have no control over what happens in that external environment. Anyways, so Pikachu Illustrator is up for auction. It's up for auction for an entire month. New controversy around that card is that the Pikachu Illustrator has been reslabbed, right? So this is also really not good news because a card of this nature should not be reslabbed at all, especially not amidst the auction, right? So this is something that the buyer should choose to do after the auction, or this should have been done before the auction even began. So what's weird about this is it's happening during the auction. There's a lot of people that have a conspiracy theory that the card has been swapped out, that it is not a PSA 10, that it is not the same card. And so it'll be really interesting to hear from you guys what you guys think about all of that. Do you believe in that? Do you believe that there's something very insidious going on here, something nefarious going on here, something illegal and fraudulent going on here? It'll be interesting to see what people think. But in the grand scheme, there's just too much going on with Pokemon right now. You just had this $1.4 million first edition base set box auction, right? For all the packs being auctioned individually. Then you have Pikachu Illustrator being auctioned for big bucks, right? After Logan Paul has bought it back, and no one has really been compensated. So you have that going on. Or some people have been compensated, not everybody. You have that going on. Liquid Marketplace just ceased to exist, or their website, you can't go on it. There's a lot of confusion going on right now. And then, on top of that, you've got 30th anniversary coming. You've got Perfect Order coming. You've got Pokemon's ramping up their printing. On top of that, they're doing the Pokemon Museum collaborations, the Pokemon Lego collaboration. There's so much going on in Pokemon. The average collector coming into this hobby, I feel like their head just wants to just explode, right? That's how mine feels, just taking in all of this information. Hopefully, the new printing facilities, as far as modern goes, really helps ramp things up. And so scalping isn't as much of a thing anymore. Buying and flipping this stuff and everybody thinking they're going to make it rich and quit their jobs and start doing Pokemon full-time. There are the few, the proud, and the brave, right? I would not recommend quitting your full-time gig to just do Pokemon. That's something that I personally don't think I could do. I like to collect way too much. It would be way too hard for me to let go of a lot of stuff. But that's for you, the viewer, to decide for yourself. Is this something that I think I could really do full time? Have you taken into account all of your time value? Have you taken into account traveling expenses? Have you taken into account the stress, the mental strain of doing this full time? All things to really think about that I think could ruin your perception of the hobby. Another thought that I've had as I'm getting back into this hobby and buying more stuff is that, maybe if I was a vendor, I would be more in touch with the hobby because I would know what's really going on, how people are buying, those trends. So I think, it's very lavish, the idea. It's very sexy, the idea of, becoming a card vendor and, getting all these deals and buying in people's stuff at a way lower percent than market. And, learning about the trends and behavior of buyers and getting these cards in and being able to wheel and deal. And I'm sure the adrenaline rush, the dopamine hit of making deals, I'm sure it's very sexy. It looks very sexy when you see videos of it and you see people doing all their vending. It looks very sexy. It looks very appealing. But I think there are a couple people that have been doing it long enough that kind of started that trend, and that we only see the successful people. We don't see the people that are getting robbed at shows. Getting robbed, not even at shows, right? Doing interactions. I see, thumbnails, collectors, people put, I got screwed over. I bought this fake booster box. I got robbed on a Facebook market deal. Home invasions, stealing Pokemon product. Shops getting busted into. We have all this stuff that makes Pokemon look really, really amazing. And then we have all this stuff to kind of feel like gets shoved down a little bit. Hey, you shut up, stop complaining, shut up, Pokemon is great, you shut up, right? It's like that. I feel like no one is noticing all of the bad stuff that's going on, and so it looks like this is the next big thing that you need to get into. And I feel like we go through cycles of this in Pokemon where, a couple months, it's not really happening, then bam, a month comes where a good set comes out, where people are able to buy and sell stuff, where Pokemon's hot again, and it's off to the races. Now, to be fair, this entire past year, all of 2025 feels like it's been off to the races. I feel like stuff has been growing and growing and growing. And back to Logan Paul's Illustrator and the first edition booster box that was just auctioned off. These are new record-breaking numbers. This is going to do something for the hobby. Whether it'll be good for all of us collectors is another thing. I don't think so. I think prices have hit new highs. There's new records, and it's Pokemon to the moon, right? Invest all you want. This is something that you can invest in. You can make a lot of money in. But as a collector, as someone that just wants to collect and keep growing their collection and look at these pieces of Pokemon history, and I like to collect vintage cards mainly, but I still dabble in modern cards too. I've got my I've got my Sun and Moon. We just picked up this beautiful tag team GX yesterday, or the day before yesterday. I mean, it's a beautiful artwork. Don't get me wrong. I love modern, but also a PSA 10 of that like semi-modern, somewhat becoming. Sun and Moon is kind of moving into the vintage realm soon. Still got a couple years left. I feel like you got to call it about 20 years to call it vintage. But I'm just saying, like, there are, I have a lot of love for modern, and, vintage is exploding right now, and modern is a little more affordable. But for the most part, for collectors like myself that really just want to predominantly collect, and we're not really too worried about making money in the hobby, new all-time highs. Ryan, come on, let's wrap it up, buddy. Let's wrap it up, buddy. New all-time highs, I don't think is a good thing for the hobby. I think for a lot of older generation cards and vintage stuff, it's going to get worse. The prices are going to get way higher. We're already seeing that across the board. Ryan's Card House just posted that he paid $100,000 for the Neo Genesis Beckett BGS Pristine Label Slow King First Edition. And like, that kind of blew my mind. I wanted to know what you guys thought about that. That sale looked a little bit over the top. And things are just, they're getting crazy out here. And I don't think it's getting any better for people that want to collect vintage cards, right? I think it's getting worse. I think for modern, as far as modern goes, there's a lot of growth potential. These cards are way more affordable, right? Okay, now I remember why this card was relevant. This card, for example, modern PSA 10, $2,000 is what I spent on it. Now, it's going for a lot more than that, but the point is, this card is still sustainable in a PSA 10, right? Still affordable, not really affordable for a modern, semi-modern card, but $2,000. That's a lot of money. But people can somehow, people can make that happen in Pokemon. People can afford it. But a lot of the vintage PSA 10 cards, right, they're going for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000, 100,000. These cards are going for amounts that the average person is just never going to get a hold of these cards in these higher grades, right? And there's a lot of people in the space that have multiples of cards like that, right? They have several people post multiple PSA 10 absolute grail cards. Like today I saw somebody with 2 PSA 10 first edition Neo Genesis Lugias. And I was just like, oh my God, dude. 2 of those, let alone 1 of them. There's people that have collections of, 7, 8 Gold Star Rayquazas, in all high grades. I mean, and you're right, you can't compare yourself to everybody else. Comparison is the thief of joy. But there's just, people are doing the most right now in Pokemon. And in vintage, we're all up against the whales of the hobby, right? There's people that are just, they're killing it in life, and they are buying up all of the stock of vintage cards. So that's what is happening with vintage for sure. Vintage supply is just ceasing to exist. It truly is. It is gone for PSA 10. PSA 9 is next on the agenda soon. Mark my words, all the PSA 9 cards will be cleaned off out of the supply. And then, like I was talking about with PSA 8 vintage cards, people are probably going to be buying those because it's just a more affordable, attainable option. It's what I'm even starting to do. Okay, let's see. The Lego collaboration, museum collaborations, Perfect Order, Pokemon printing a ton of stuff, Logan Paul's record-breaking auctions, and just in general, record-breaking auctions across the board, like everywhere in vintage, there are records being broken. And it's kind of, it's amazing because you're seeing the value of these things you've collected when people told you you were crazy or you were, a nut job for buying all these Pokemon cards, spending all this money. A lot of people told me that. It's validating to see the value and be like, well, look what it's worth today. That validation is amazing, right? But the flip side of that is that nothing is sustainable anymore. none of it is sustainable anymore. I'm trying to find some sustainable form of collecting, buying and selling cards from the card shop, and kind of trying to make that work. But for the most part, even going to the shop, the prices are so much higher than what I'd like to pay. And I feel like I'm pretty reasonable when it comes to going and buying, large lots of cards from the shop. Coming in to spend a couple $1,000s, I kind of want to get some type of discount, but even with the discount, the prices are already higher than I'd like, and it's not sustainable. None of this is sustainable anymore, and I feel like there's a trend happening here with Logan Paul. Maybe he's cashing out a Pokemon. He's unloading his first edition box. He's already unloaded it. He's unloading his Pikachu Illustrator. He's like, I don't need to be involved in this. I'm going to go ahead and cash out while things are at a peak right now. Or maybe it's the beginning of something, right? Like, he's getting in while the getting is good, and then Pokemon is going to flatline for a while. I'm just curious if, I doubt it. Like, Logan Paul doesn't know anything that we don't, that he doesn't know anything we don't know, but maybe he does. Maybe things in the hobby in general are about to take a turn, potentially for the worst. And, it's like, oh, here we go with Orion saying, like, maybe we should be just a little bit fearful here that these massive auctions are happening and that these massive cards are getting sold. But maybe Pokemon is just safer than it's ever been right now. It's all good news, right? We're seeing new records, Pokemon, which shows growth, it shows demand, it shows popularity, it shows that if the Pikachu Illustrator goes for, 10 million, 20 million, it shows how much it's grown in popularity in multiples, right? $5 million card when Logan Paul got it. If it goes to 10 million, doubles, that's going to say a lot about the hobby. I think a lot is hinged on this card's sale. Now, it is a very rare, very sought-after card, but I think it's going to represent a lot of what's going on in the hobby right now. And I already feel like the base set box selling for 1.4 nearly says a lot about what's going on in the hobby. That was a $250,000 box, right? Maybe a $500,000 box. Max, I thought, for the longest time. So to see those packs going for $40,000 a booster pack for first edition base shadowless, that blows my mind. That absolutely blows my mind. But yeah, in terms of modern, there's still growth, right? There's still opportunities where you can get a card for a couple grand that's going to go up in value there's a lot more of them on the market. So, with vintage, when there's only 100 of that card or 200 of that card, it's very easy to do a buyout, right? People, we've seen buyouts in modern of these cheaper modern cards where people buy out on TCG Player, and so the card goes up in value because of the supply. But it's so hard to do that, really. Like, that doesn't really work as much as people might say it does. But with vintage, it's very feasible and unfortunately already happening. People are buying multiple copies of the same card, stocking up. I kind of did that, but not really. I have an extra PSA 9 Skyridge Gengar on top of my 10. I have an extra Sabrina Gengar and a PSA 9 on top of my 10. But that was more just because I'm very happy with the copies and I got them at a better price than what they are today. And I'm just like, until I absolutely really need to get rid of these and I need the money, I'm just going to hold on to them because of all this craziness, right? If things keep getting crazier, there's really no reason for me to unload, cards that are in my personal collection. But yeah, modern is still right. There's still a lot you can do with modern cards, like these tag team GXs that are still super, super hot. I know the Latios has hit, $10,000. That I guess is the new record for that card. Really would still like to get that card in my collection. But yeah, we've got for modern, they're doing reprints. We've got the printing facility coming down the line. I think it's going to be a lot more enjoyable for modern Pokemon card collectors. I think it's going to be a lot more enjoyable looking forward into the future. I'm optimistic about Pokemon. You've got Pokemon Pocket is awesome. The museum collabs are awesome. Legos are awesome. The printing facilities are awesome. Give us more product and more reprints. That's awesome, right? I believe in that. unfortunately, the thing that I've been rooting for the whole time, vintage grail cards, it almost feels like I knew this was going to happen and it was inevitable, and I just didn't have enough money to keep up with it, right? I knew that people were going to come around and vintage grail cards were going to just explode exponentially. And they are. They're going absolutely nuts, right? Cards that were a month ago $1,000, $2,000 are now $6,000, $7,000, right? From Gym Heroes, Gym Challenge is a great example. Not to shoot myself in the foot any more than I've already done by talking about some of my favorite sets, but yeah, everything is going crazy. People are wisening up, and they're going, okay, this modern stuff is not going anywhere. They're going to be printing a lot more of it in the future. Let me go and see what's good in vintage in that whole area. And more and more people are going to be coming into vintage, I think, and jumping on the bandwagon, and it's going to make it very, very competitive in this space, and it's going to make it very pricey. And it's also why I guess I'll just continue buying vintage cards that I like, but I will be buying them probably in lower grades because I still think that they're going to outperform, and as an investment. But I also just think it's way more affordable, right? The wages haven't gone up. Cost of living has gone up. Food has gone up in price. Everything has gotten higher with inflation. Pokemon cards are growing a lot faster than the pace of most people's incomes, right? So it's very difficult to keep up with some of those vintage grail cards that I've talked about in the past. So if you're looking at lower PSA graded examples, there is nothing wrong with that. That's what most people, and myself included, are doing now. We're looking at lower graded copies because it's just way more affordable, more bang for your buck. And grading is very subjective, right? There can be such insignificant differences from a PSA 10 to a PSA 9. And, especially when it comes to vintage and cards that were graded a long time ago, the standards have changed, but for the most part, a near mint card is a near mint card. So don't beat yourself up if you feel like me and you feel like I just can't keep up with the big dogs. I can't keep up with the whales anymore. I cannot continue to buy these cards that are, just absolutely financially draining me. They're, $20,000, $30,000 cards, $10,000 cards. I'm not saying to not go for your dream card. If it's, you have a dream card in PSA 10 that you've always really wanted. I'm not saying to not go for that. I'm just saying you can collect way more and get way more value out of buying some of the lower graded options. As a modern card collector right now, it's an amazing time to be buying illustration rares and SIRs. I feel like the prices are super sustainable as far as modern goes. Super sustainable, right? Aside from a set being brand new and letting the prices cool off a little bit, I think we are going to have so much supply out there of modern cards, and it won't be for another couple of years until the stuff from this mega generation really starts to take off. And I think, the mega generation is still going to be a generation where the cards really hold their weight and value a bit. I think it's the future generations that we really, really have to be concerned about with all the printing. It's kind of like, people saying modern will become the new vintage. That's true. Stuff like Evolving Skies, Fusion Strike, Lost Origin, Silver Tempest, Brilliant Stars booster boxes, Sword and Shield booster boxes right now. I feel like if you're going to do sealed product and you can get a deal on these products and you're not just paying market price for them, if you can get a deal on these products, these are the products I would maybe be looking at if you're looking at sealed product. Maybe even some Sun and Moon booster boxes, even though those have gotten crazy expensive too. But Sword and Shield, I think, is still in a nice spot where they didn't print it nearly as much as they're printing stuff as they printed stuff from Scarlet Violet, as they're printing stuff from Mega Evolution, from the Mega era. But these next generations, with all the printing that's going to happen, it's going to have, it's a catch-22 where, it's amazing that they're going to print more, but also people are never going to be happy in this hobby. There's always going to be something to complain about. And the next thing people are going to complain about is that nothing is worth anything because they're printing it into the ground, right? It'll be interesting, even if people are buying into the next era of overprinted sets, will there still be that chance of like, this is still going to go up too in value. This is going to go up in value in another couple of years. We're going to get a higher population. There's going to be more people living on the planet, more people getting into Pokemon, more people that get into the hobby. And that's always going to balance out, the supply demand issue in Pokemon, where it's still going to be popular. But if Pokemon's popularity drops off even a little bit and they're printing absolutely enormous amounts of cards, we could see a very nasty effect in the market overall for modern stuff. And we could see a lot of people kind of getting screwed over on their investments. I really think if you are going to invest in sealed product, Scarlet Violet is looking good. Sword and Shield is probably looking good in terms of really retaining that value. It's had some age to it, but it's still somewhat affordable. I just sold a Silver Tempest box today for $500. And I'm like, dude, if I could get that same box again for $375 or $400 or $425, right? I've never really thought about buying in a higher market and reselling. And that's the bread and butter for vendors, right? They just take in anything at 67% and then just resell it at the market and win. And that is, I would say for a lot of people, a recipe for disaster because they just don't have the means and they don't have the time or the exposure to the hobby the way that vendors do at a table with tons of people and lots of demand. Right now is an amazing time, I imagine, to be a vendor and a seller. And it's, I've been doing good on eBay, but the amount of time and energy that I spend listing stuff on eBay really kind of, gets in the way of it really being worth it. Whereas you're at a show, you can just unload stuff. So, but there are instances where I go into the card shop and I picked up this card for $2,000, even though I saw that it was in auction at $2,500 at the time. That auction has probably ended. I need to check on what this card ended up selling for, but that's one of the best parts about the hobby is that even though you're spending a lot of money to acquire these cards and these products, most of the time stuff does go up, so it's a pretty safe place to park your money. I do fear with modern stuff, I do fear with overprinting and then the demand pulling back that could really ruin Pokemon for a minute, in the years to come. Right now, I don't think we have anything to worry about. I think these mega sets have been coming out strong, so I'm going to stay positive. But yeah, on that note, I'm going to end the video. Guys, let me know what you think about vintage being super explosive right now, and the first edition base box auction and the Pikachu Illustrator, the whole conspiracy of the Pikachu Illustrator potentially being swapped, and just all the issues you guys think there are with the whole thing with the Pikachu Illustrator. And what do you guys think it's going to go for? That's another thing that I'd be interested to know from you guys. Do you think that the Pikachu Illustrator is going to go for 20 million? Do you think it's going to go for 10 million? Do you think it's going to go for 7 million? Do you think it's going to go for 6 million or like 5 million? Like he basically breaks even on the Pikachu Illustrator. Because if something like that happened and it was proof that people are not willing to spend that kind of money in the hobby, I think it would have a large effect across the board in the hobby. If we did not see that price rise in a big way, I think it would say a lot of things, because that card is such an iconic card, such a major trophy card to everybody, that if we didn't see it go for twice or 3 or 4 times as much as what Logan Paul bought it for, that might be a little bit of an alarm. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about everything. Probably forgot to cover some things. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching my videos, and I'll see you guys next time.